Feel that fabric against your skin. You put it on this morning without thinking, you'll take it off tonight without thinking. It is so automatic, so invisible, that you probably haven't questioned it since you were a child asking your parents why you couldn't just run around naked. Here's the question nobody asks. Why does a species that evolved to lose its fur need to cover itself back up? Tonight, we're answering that. And the answer isn't in your closet, it's written into your DNA. It involves lice. It involves a genetic clock scientists can actually read, and it involves a twist that changes what clothing was really for. Let that sink in, because by the end of this video, you will never get dressed the same way again. Here's what most people assume. Clothing exists for two reasons: modesty and warmth. We cover our bodies because nakedness is shameful, and we cover our bodies because the world is cold. Both of those assumptions are wrong. Or at least they're incomplete in a way that hides something much stranger. Let's start with modesty. Shame about nakedness isn't universal. Anthropologists have documented dozens of cultures throughout history where nudity carried no shame at all. Shame is cultural. It's taught. It's not wired into you the way fear of falling is wired into you. So modesty can't be the origin. It's something that got attached to clothing much later. Now let's talk about warmth. This one seems obvious. Humans are famously hairless. We're often called the naked ape. Surely we started wearing animal skins the moment we got cold. Except here's the problem. Humans didn't start out cold. We started in Africa. Warm, sun-drenched equatorial Africa. And here's the part that should stop you. We lost our body hair before we needed clothing to replace it. Think about that sequence for a second. Evolution didn't strip away our fur and leave us shivering. That would be a catastrophic design flaw. So why did we go furless in a hot climate with nothing to cover us? The answer is endurance. Early humans were not the fastest animals on the savannah. We weren't the strongest. We couldn't outrun a gazelle or overpower a lion, but we had one advantage almost no other large mammal had. We could sweat efficiently across our entire bodies, and a body covered in thick fur cannot cool itself that way. So our ancestors lost their fur to become better at one specific skill: persistence hunting, chasing prey not with speed, but with relentless, sweat-cooled endurance for hours, sometimes an entire day, until the animal collapsed from heat exhaustion and we hadn't. Losing our fur wasn't a mistake. It was a hunting weapon. Researchers studying this, including evolutionary biologist Daniel Lieberman, have pointed to something remarkable. A human being, untrained, can outlast almost any four-legged animal on Earth over long enough distance in enough heat. Not because we're faster, because we don't overheat the way they do. A cheetah can outrun you in seconds. It cannot outrun you for 6 hours under an African sun. Eventually, it has to stop, pant, and cool down. You don't. You just keep sweating and keep walking and keep closing the distance. That single advantage may have been enough to change the entire trajectory of the species. It rewarded bodies with less fur, more sweat glands, and longer limbs built for covering ground efficiently. Every generation that ran a little cooler, a little longer, out-hunted the generation next to it. But that leaves us with hairless bodies, in direct sun, with skin now exposed to UV radiation it had never faced before at that intensity. So evolution answered with something else: melanin. Darker skin evolved to protect that newly bare skin from the sun. We were built, quite literally, to be naked, successfully, comfortably, for a very long time. So when did that change, and why? This is where the lice come in. Stay with this because it's stranger than it sounds. Humans carry two separate species of louse: head lice, which live in your hair, and body lice, which live specifically in clothing and only survive by nesting in fabric fibers. Body lice cannot survive on bare skin. They evolved specifically to live in the folds of worn clothing, which means the moment body lice evolved as a distinct species, humans must have already been wearing something. Scientists can measure the genetic divergence between head lice and body lice, the same way you'd measure how long ago two branches of a family split apart. Mutations accumulate at a roughly steady rate, so counting the differences between the two louse genomes works like a molecular stopwatch. Researchers, including geneticist Mark Stoneking, ran that clock using DNA extracted from lice populations around the world. And when the number came back, it landed around 170,000 years ago. That is the birth certificate for human clothing. Not a cave painting, not a preserved garment. A parasite's DNA hidden in the seams of something that hasn't existed in 170,000 years, still readable inside a living insect today. Think about how strange that is as a form of evidence. No fabric from that era survived. Organic material like animal hide or woven fiber breaks down within a few thousand years under normal conditions, so archaeologists will likely never hold the actual garment in their hands. The clothing is gone, but the parasite that depended on it is still alive, still carrying a genetic record of the moment its habitat first appeared. 170,000 years. Let that sink in. Here's what makes that number so unsettling. Anatomically modern humans, people who looked essentially like you, existed for roughly 300,000 years before that louse split. Which means for well over 100,000 years, our ancestors lived, hunted, raised children, and survived shifting climates completely naked. Clothing isn't some ancient, permanent feature of being human. It's a relatively late invention layered onto a species that spent most of its existence without it. It isn't just the lice, either. Archaeologists have found supporting physical clues that line up with roughly the same window. Bone awls, tools shaped specifically for piercing hide, start showing up at sites in Africa. Scrapers with wear patterns consistent with cleaning animal skins appear alongside them. None of it is a finished garment, but all of it points toward the same conclusion the lice already gave us. Something was being processed, pierced, and worn. So if it wasn't warmth that got us hairless, and it wasn't warmth that immediately reclothed us either, what actually triggered it? Around that same window, roughly 170,000 years ago, something else was happening. Homo sapiens were beginning to migrate. Out of the warm equatorial regions that had shaped our hairless, dark-skinned bodies, and into colder latitudes our biology had never been built for. Clothing wasn't the origin trait of humanity. It was survival technology, invented at the exact moment our bodies stopped matching our environment. Which means clothing is one of the first examples of something that defines humans more than almost anything else. We don't just adapt our bodies to survive a new environment. We invent tools that adapt the environment to us. Fire did this. Clothing did this. Shelter did this. We are the species that stopped waiting on evolution and started outsourcing survival to technology. And once clothing existed, it stopped being just insulation. Because here's the uncomfortable part. The moment a group of humans could produce or trade for better animal hides, better furs, tighter weaves, they had a survival advantage over the group next to them who couldn't. Clothing became the first form of technological inequality. Better protection from cold meant surviving migrations into harsher land that killed people with worse protection. Long before status symbols, before jewelry, before rank and title, what you wore may have quietly decided who lived and who didn't. And there's a chilling comparison sitting right next to us in the fossil record. Neanderthals, who had lived in cold Eurasian climates for far longer than we had, show far less evidence of tailored, fitted clothing. Some researchers suspect they relied more on draped, unshaped hides, thrown over the body rather than sewn to fit it. Modern humans, arriving later with eyed needles and tailored garments that trapped body heat far more efficiently, may have simply outlasted them in the cold in a way Neanderthals couldn't. Sewing technique might have been one of the quiet factors separating which human species made it into the modern world and which one didn't. Clothing solved a crisis, and then, almost immediately, it created a hierarchy. That pattern should sound familiar because it hasn't stopped. Think about what clothing means to you today. It's not really about temperature anymore, is it? You don't check the weather before deciding what impression you want to make walking into a room. You choose fabric, brand, fit, color, all of it signaling something about who you are, what you can afford, what group you belong to. The insulation function has almost become an afterthought. We took a tool built to solve a physical survival problem and turned it into one of the most complex social languages our species has ever created. Every outfit is still, in some distorted way, a signal about status and belonging. That instinct is 170,000 years old. You just don't feel it as survival anymore. You feel it as style. Look at how far that signaling is traveled. A specific logo on a jacket can add hundreds of dollars to its price without changing a single fiber of the actual fabric. A uniform can instantly tell strangers whether to trust you, obey you, or ignore you before you said a word. Even the deliberate choice to dress down, to look casual and unbothered, is itself a signal, often available only to people secure enough in their status not to need to prove it. None of that is really about temperature. It's the same ancient machinery running a completely different program. And it cuts both ways. Just as better protection once meant surviving a colder migration, worse access to clothing still marks the bottom of a hierarchy today. Historically, sumptuary laws in medieval Europe literally dictated which fabrics and colors different social classes were legally allowed to wear, turning clothing into an enforced hierarchy rather than just an inherited advantage. The mechanism changed. The underlying instinct, using what covers your body to announce where you stand, never really left. So, here's the uncomfortable modern parallel. You're never actually touching your own skin, not in public, rarely even at home. From the moment you wake up to the moment you sleep, there is almost always a layer of engineered material between you and the world your body evolved to sense directly. Temperature, texture, even other people's bodies. All of it filtered through fabric first. We are, in a very literal sense, the species that put its own biology inside a wrapper, and we did it so long ago and so thoroughly that it now feels like the most natural thing in the world to be covered. Nakedness feels foreign, vulnerable, wrong even in most cultures. We inverted our own starting conditions so completely that the original state, bare skin and open air, now feels like the exception. That's worth sitting with, because it says something bigger about what a human actually is. Every other animal on this planet is stuck with the body evolution gave it. A polar bear cannot decide to grow thinner fur for a warm summer. A gazelle cannot choose to run faster. But a human being, faced with a body that had shed its natural insulation in exchange for becoming a better hunter, simply built a replacement. We didn't wait millennia for evolution to catch up. We solved the problem in a single generation with a sharpened bone and a stretched hide, and then kept refining that solution for 170,000 years until it became everything from a school uniform to a wedding dress to the shirt on your back right now. We are not a finished animal that occasionally builds tools. We are a species defined by rewriting the terms of our survival over and over, so often and so early that we forgot we were ever doing it. Clothing wasn't an accessory added on to human nature. Clothing helped invent modern human nature, shaping migration, shaping hierarchy, shaping identity, all from a single practical solution to a body that had made itself vulnerable in the name of becoming a better hunter. So, the next time you get dressed, notice it. Really notice it. That motion, pulling fabric over bare skin, is not some neutral, meaningless habit. It's the echo of a decision your ancestors made 170,000 years ago, when a hairless, sun-adapted endurance hunting animal walked out of Africa and discovered its own body could no longer keep up with the world it wanted to conquer. You didn't inherit clothing. You inherited the problem clothing was invented to solve. And you've been solving it every single morning of your life, without ever once asking why.